People want to discount the importance and power of voting. Meanwhile, politicians and power brokers spend millions of dollars and never-ending effort to suppress or control your vote. These are smart people. Why would they do this unless they see the power of voting and they want to make sure it doesn't hurt them? We've grown too cynical. I'm so tired of hearing the word rigged. The people in power are relying on you doing nothing so they can stay in power. Large voter engagement and turnout frightens them. Well, I say let's scare the shit out of them. Hello again. Welcome to The Ruthless Truth. I am your host, Truth Davis. In this forum, I share opinions, thoughts, truths on a wide variety of topics based on what I believe to be a unique life experience. And you can read more of the details in the notes or the bio. I'm an inner city kid who ascended to the C-suite of a Fortune 100 company. So I've seen some things. My intent is to share stories and experiences and hopefully provide some life and career lessons that will assist you on your journey. Please follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5, subscribe to the YouTube channel Ruthless Truth, and there's also a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. General format, I'll share some initial commentary on current news or just some thoughts. Then I'll have a deeper discussion on one topic, which is today's truth. And then I like to finish with an American history fun fact. Okay, where to start today? I know it's primary season and politics is dominating the news, but I'm a bit weary of all the campaigns, debates, and propaganda. There are plenty of sources available if you want to engage in those discussions, but there's nothing specifically I want to address today. That said, in last week's episode, I did ask and in fact plead with people to get out and vote. Mind you, I did not advocate for any specific individual, issue, or party. I just want people to embrace the concept and responsibility of voting in general. I believe our government and society function better when more of its citizens actively participate. And as is often the case, I was surprised by listener feedback and comments. Apparently, there's a lot of apathy and cynicism when it comes to voting. While I heard many reasons and excuses for not participating in the democratic process, the most common refrain I heard was, well, my vote doesn't matter. This sentiment reminds me of a scene from a movie, Bedazzled. It was a romantic comedy released in the year 2000 starring Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley. And by the way, the movie is hilarious, okay? Anyway, Elizabeth Hurley plays the devil who offers Brendan Fraser's character, Elliot, 7 wishes in exchange for his soul. And he resists initially. He's like, my soul? You want my soul? I can't give you my soul. You can't take my soul. And she says, who are you now, James Brown? Besides, do you even know what your soul is? Have you ever seen it? What has it ever done for you? It's like your appendix. You won't even miss it. And then he says, well, if it's so useless, why do you want it so badly? Okay? Well, that's how I feel about the right to vote. People want to discount the importance and power of voting. Meanwhile, politicians and power brokers spend millions of dollars and never-ending effort to suppress or control your vote. These are smart people. Why would they do this unless they see the power of voting and they want to make sure it doesn't hurt them? We've grown too cynical. I'm so tired of hearing the word rigged. The people in power are relying on you doing nothing so they can stay in power. Large voter engagement and turnout frightens them. Well, I say let's scare the shit out of them in the primaries and again in November. Again, I don't care who you vote for. Just get informed, understand the candidates and the issues, then go vote. Okay, it's late May, approaching June, and we're approaching peak wedding season. Now, if you've listened to me for any period of time, you know I am a huge advocate for marriage. And I practice what I preach. I mean, I've been married to the same woman for 36 years. And not only do I see marriage as a long-term commitment that can bring joy to your life, but it's also a foundation for building wealth. This is evidenced by the fact that 85% of all millionaires are married. And given the U.S. marriage rate right now is at an all-time low, I celebrate any and all upcoming nuptial events. Yes, I believe marriage is great. But I see the discussion of weddings a little differently. Just to say it, I'm just not a big fan of huge, expensive weddings. And for a couple of reasons. First, financially. It can be a significant expense with no real residual assets other than memories. The average wedding now costs $35,000, and it's not uncommon at all to see wedding expenses greatly exceed $50,000. That's a lot of money. Now, if you got it like that, that's fine. I mean, there are many affluent families who can quite easily afford this with no disruption to their current and future finances. And I say, good for them. However, if you are not one of these wealthy people, you should be a bit more prudent when it comes to your wedding, especially if you're a young couple. Please don't make debt a guest at your wedding. So that's the financial aspect part of it. My other issue is based on this empirical fact. The more a couple spends on their wedding, the more likely the marriage will fail. Again, the more you spend on the wedding, the more difficulty there will be in the wedding. Why, you might wonder? Because a big wedding requires a lot of time, money, and energy focused on one day. Instead of that energy being expended by the couple trying to figure out how they will live together after the one big day passes. It can be quite an adjustment, if not a restart. So I just encourage young couples and newlyweds to keep things in perspective. Okay, let's get to today's truth. Today's truth. You know, historically, obtaining advanced degrees in education usually leads to more employment opportunity and higher wages across your professional career and lifetime. Specifically, receiving a master's degree boosted salaries by more than 25% versus bachelor degree holders in the same field. And for people under the age of 35, master degree holders consistently had a much lower unemployment rate than those with only an undergraduate degree. But is this still the case today? Well, no, it isn't. So, in today's truth, I'll update the current and future prospects for graduate school pursuits and provide guidance to help you choose wisely as you build your long-term career plan. Okay, let's first get to the current state. According to a recent Wall Street Journal report, getting a master's degree just isn't the guarantee it used to be. In fact, the unemployment rate for workers under 35 with a master's degree has rarely been higher than it is today. Conversely, the unemployment rate for people under 35 with a PhD, law degree, or medical degree has rarely been lower. So clearly not all graduate degrees are created equal, and fewer degrees have experienced more of a decline in value than the Masters of Business Administration, or the MBA. Now, when I was growing up, the MBA was seen as the quickest ticket to six-figure salaries. The program was only 2 years, 4 semesters, and sometimes less. There was no thesis requirement, and the degree was a ticket to the lucrative professions of Wall Street, consulting, and then just corporate America management. Not now. Applications to MBA programs have decreased significantly over the past few years. And why? Well, there are a few factors. The first one, without question, is expense. A 2-year MBA program can cost more than $100,000 in tuition, and that's not counting the potential lost income for not spending those 2 years working. Okay? Second, employers are shifting to more skill-based hiring rather than just relying on degrees. And this makes sense. I mean, I know as a hiring manager, I placed much less value on degrees than I did achievements in the workplace and skills demonstrated. Another factor are the changes in corporate structure in American businesses. I discussed this in depth in episode 46 of The Ruthless Truth. Specifically, the entry-level job market is the worst it has been in the last 37 years. The proliferation of AI now has assumed responsibility for many administrative analytical skills that historically had fallen to entry-level management employees. Also, organizations are flattening and they're reducing the layers of management, thus reducing prospects for promotion. The days of the high starting salary and lucrative sign-on bonus, they're fading. Now, if you are considering pursuing a graduate degree, here's a key distinction to consider. While degrees from law school and medical school amount to a license to practice, master's degrees are more of just a signal, according to Gad Levinon of the Burning Glass Institute, which is a labor market think tank focused on the future of work. And then he continued, quote, "And signal loses value when so many people have one. It's hardly a sure bet to securing a job." But again, not all master's degrees are the same. Some programs are thriving. Let me ask you, when's the last time you went to see the doctor? And I'm not talking about a specialist. I'm just talking about your plain old primary care physician. Well, on that visit, did you actually see a doctor? Well, if so, good for you, because it is becoming increasingly more common that patients will be attended to by a nurse practitioner rather than a full MD. Well, what's behind this trend? Well, there are a couple of factors. First, there's a shortage of 16,000 primary care physicians nationwide at a time when a large segment of the population is graying and in demand of more healthcare services. Nurse practitioners help fill the gap. Second, nurse practitioners are a lot cheaper. Granted, their average salary of $147,000 per year is significantly more than that of, say, a registered nurse who makes on average $98,000 per year. But it pales in comparison to primary care physicians who have an average salary of $247,000 per year. So given this, if you're looking for a well-paying career that is immune to AI, nurse practitioner might be the way to go. The total cost for earning an NP degree, including tuition and fees, average about $50,000, and it has a range of $30,000 to $100,000, depending on whether you pursue a master's or doctorate of nursing practicing, and the selection of the school, like whether you go to a private school or a state school. So it's something to consider. And it's not just nurse practitioners. Other master's programs, including nursing, physician's assistant, and public health administration are all doing very well. And then beyond healthcare, other high ROI master degrees include computer science with an AI concentration and engineering. However, if your heart is set on a career in business, all is not lost. I do have some good news on the MBA front. With applications down, more business schools are giving steep discounts on tuition that can save students up to 50%. A couple of prominent examples. Purdue's Mitch Daniels School of Business is knocking 40% off its tuition this upcoming fall, because they started this discount program last fall and they saw a large number of students opt in, which makes the 48 credit hour program only $36,000 for out-of-state students, down from its previous amount of $60,000. In-state tuition is $35,000, and students can take at least 2 years to complete the online MBA program. The Paul Marriage School of Business at the University of California, Irvine, they're cutting tuition as much as 38%, or between $30,000 and $48,000 for the fall on its flex and executive MBA programs. These include online and evening courses, which allow students to keep full-time jobs working alongside their studies. So you don't have to have that opportunity cost of giving up salary while going to school. Both programs include a redesigned curriculum that incorporates AI and emerging technologies. Many other schools are offering similar discounts, so just do your research. Now, there's one other factor driving down the cost of tuition that may have been unforeseen by many and even not seen today. Last year, as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, a cap was placed on the amount of loans that could be taken out for graduate school. Specifically, for general graduate students, which includes most master's programs, the lifetime maximum for a student loan is $100,000. Now, previously, there was no limit on the amount of student loans you could take out to pursue graduate school, okay? So, in response, many graduate programs are lowering their tuition to $99,000. Oh, how convenient. It also tells me they had previously been inflating tuition, relying on the students to take on heavy student loan debt. Now, these universities are forced to implement more reasonable pricing, and that is a very good thing. So, in summary, I want to emphasize that pursuing a graduate degree can still be a rewarding endeavor, both in terms of increased earning potential and professional development. But just realize that not all degrees are created equal. Medical and law degrees still carry high probability of gainful employment and high compensation. And within the category of master's programs, you'll get the greatest return on your tuition investment from careers in nursing, healthcare administration, human resources and services, and STEM, with an emphasis on artificial intelligence. And while it's not as lucrative as in the past, an MBA degree can still lift your prospects. Just make sure you don't overpay, because the degree has definitely lost some market value. Okay, let's get to today's American history fun fact. Today's American history fun fact. Today, we will discuss the history of one of the most iconic and well-known monuments in the United States and the 30-year journey and battle to get it completed. So, in 1933, Luther Eli Smith, a lawyer and civic leader in St. Louis, wanted to revive the riverfront of St. Louis, which was set on the banks of the Mississippi River. Smith saw a three-part opportunity. He wanted first to erect a monument to honor Thomas Jefferson and celebrate U.S. Western expansion. Second, revive the riverfront. And thirdly, just stimulate the overall St. Louis economy. So he pitched the idea to the mayor, Bernard Dickman, and other civic leaders. And in December 1933, the nonprofit Jefferson National Expansion Memorial Association, JNEMA for short, was formed. And Smith was appointed chairman and Mayor Dickman vice chairman. Now, understand, this was 1933. The country was suffering through the Great Depression, and the project would be expensive. The association expected that $30 million would be needed to undertake the construction of such a monument. Well, that's about $576 million in 2024 dollars. And it called upon the federal government to foot 3/4 of the bill. So, needless to say, local support was lukewarm at best. Committee members began pitching the memorial as a job creator. They were projecting that 3,000 to 5,000 new jobs would be generated over a period of 3 to 4 years. Additionally, they lobbied Congress, and on June 15, 1934, President Franklin Roosevelt signed a bill into law instituting the United States Territorial Expansion Memorial Commission. In 1935, the project received a grant of $6.8 million, in addition to the $2.5 million in city bonds that they had already raised. Okay? And some taxpayers began to file suits to block the construction of the monument, which they saw as a boondoggle. The remainder of the 1930s resulted in constant appeals and arguments over funding both in Washington and locally. Local citizen adversaries to the monument, led by Paul Peters, distributed pamphlets to the U.S. Congress entitled, quote, "Public Necessity or Just Plain Pork." In 1938, the JNEMA did acquire land and buildings for the site via condemnation, also known as eminent domain. This is where the government seizes private property for public use, usually with no compensation to the owners. Demolition began in 1939 and was completed in 1942. Okay, so at this point, Luther Smith's committee had the land, they had some money, but now he needed an actual design for the monument. So the idea of an architectural competition to determine the design of the memorial was favored at JNEMA's inaugural meeting. They planned to award cash for the best design. So in January 1945, they officially announced a 2-stage design competition that would cost $225,000 to organize. Well, it took them 2 years to raise the $225,000. But on May 30th, 1947, the contest officially opened. And Eero Saarinen, a Finnish-American designer and architect, led the team that won first prize in the contest. He would later go on to design the General Motors Technical Center, Dulles Airport, and other nationally recognized American structures. Construction of the arch began in 1963 and was completed on October 28, 1965. And the total cost was actually less than $15 million. Now, insurance underwriters had estimated that 13 construction workers would likely die on the project. But fortunately, not one death was recorded. However, construction of the arch was still often delayed by safety checks, funding uncertainties, and some legal disputes. Now, here's something you may not know. Civil rights activists regarded the construction of the arch as a token of racial discrimination. And so on July 14, 1964, Percy Green, a black activist and member of the St. Louis chapter of the Congress of Racial Equality, and Richard Daley, a white college student, scaled the Gateway Arch to protest the exclusion of blacks from federal contracts and jobs related to the construction of the arch. Green, Daley, and protesters on the ground demanded that McDonald Construction Company, the contractor responsible for the constructing of the arch, raised the number of African Americans employed on the project to 10% within 10 days. Now, Green and Daly were charged with trespassing and other offenses, but they were successful in their protest. And today, a photo of Percy Green hangs inside the arch in a display commemorating the arch's history. And by the way, Percy Green is still alive, amazingly. Construction was completed in October 1965, although the visitor center did not open until June 1967. And then the arch was dedicated by Vice President Hubert Humphrey in May 1968. 35 years after the initial idea was proposed by Eli Smith, and 7 years after the death of Eero Saarinen, who designed the monument. The National Gateway Arch, constructed of stainless steel, stands 630 feet tall and is the world's tallest arch. The project did not provide the 5,000 jobs as expected, and as of June 64, the actual number of workers working on it were fewer than 100. The project did, however, incentivize other restoration efforts. The arch is one of the most popular national parks, averaging 2.5 million visitors every year. Okay, that's all I have for you today on The Ruthless Truth. Thank you so much for listening. Again, follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Ruthless Truth. Also a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. And I encourage you to review the list of past episodes. They cover a wide variety of topics. I'm sure you'll find subject matter of interest and use. Again, thanks for listening, and I will talk to all of you soon.